So I'm going to talk about the secret to a powerful and barrier-free workforce. And my agenda is going to start off with a video. I'm going to give a little bit of a background about myself first. I worked for the ministry for 37 years in different roles, but the last 10 to 15 years I was working as the fleet manager, but I also was the workplace diversity coordinator. And this video was a result of something that we did in a reorganization back in 1996. And in 1996, we actually downsized. We were a have-not province. We're not there now, but we were a have-not province at the time. And we had our budgets cut to $165 million for all of our roads. We had 26,000 kilometers of road. And I guess there was a speaker earlier this morning that said that the roads in Saskatchewan weren't very smooth, and I can honestly say back in 1996 that was the truth. I think we've come a long way since then. But we're up to about 600 million. So that just gives you an idea of what our budget was back in 1996. In that reorganization, I went to bed a fleet manager and woke up, an area manager woke up a fleet manager. And when I woke up a fleet manager, I had to go to all the shops and talk to them about what we were going to look like, and it was going to be a lot less people. We went from 120 staff down to 80 staff. And it was going to be difficult to look after all that equipment because we still had all the roads to look after. And what happened was we had someone in one of our shops, when I was visiting the shops, talking to them about what we were going to do, someone said, well, you know, if we've got all this work to do, why don't we look at maybe hiring someone with an intellectual or cognitive disability to do some of the work that we're doing in the shops and have them maybe wash the equipment, sweep the floors, maybe hold a wrench, maybe get a part, do that kind of stuff. And that had never been done before. And we managed to do it in all of our shops, and it's still going on today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But I'm going to start out with the video, because the video was a result of us doing that back in 1996. It was a result of the Saskatchewan Association for Rehabilitation Centers and the University of Saskatchewan getting together and putting a video together on how this could work in a unionized workplace. And so I'm going to start with the video, and after the video I'll continue talking about the success stories. So anyway, supported employment, the definition, and this is what we use, is an approach to assisting individuals with disabilities to prepare for, obtain, maintain integrated community-based paid employment. A variety of support is tailored to individual requirements. Employment is defined as an employer-employee relationship or self-employment. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the letter of understanding. In that video, it talked about how we did this, and I mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, how we involved the employees and how it was important to have the employees on side, and how this happened in a unionized environment. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about the process, and this process is in the letter of understanding that was signed between the Saskatchewan Government Employees Union and the provincial government. And first of all, we looked at it as considering the possibilities. And I talked a little bit about that at the very beginning of my talk about why it was important to hire someone with a cognitive or intellectual disability, that there was a need. And the consultation with the employees, that is really, really important. What we found is that if we were going to bring someone with a cognitive disability into the workplace, we needed to dispel the myths. We needed to ensure that the workplace understood what that was all about. And what we used in Saskatchewan was the Saskatchewan Association for Community Living to come in and talk to the employees about why this was important. And by doing that, you dispel the myths and made sure that the workplace was going to embrace these employees that were different than themselves. And our community-based employer, like I said, was the Saskatchewan Association for Community Living. The assessment and selection, we worked with our partner on who we were going to get to do this. And the orientation, coaching, and preparing the workplace. I can't stress that enough. You heard that from Bob Beeman, the president of the Saskatchewan Government Employees Union. how important it was to make sure that the workplace was ready, because we knew that if we put someone into a workplace that was going to be shunned in the workplace, and I know all of you that have worked in workplaces, if you're not, if people don't like you there or they don't want you there, it can be a very difficult place to work. And we wanted to make sure that we had the support of all the employees there, so that when we did bring someone in, that they would help them out like anyone else. And then the ongoing orientation, coaching, and workplace preparation. I don't think that's any different than anyone else. Really, there's always that ongoing coaching and preparation. And the longer the employee is there, the more coaching or the more courses people go on. We didn't do anything different when we hired a person with a cognitive disability. And future career possibilities. What we found with employees that started out as shop assistants, there was a couple of them, and you'll see Clint farther in the presentation, where he did do more than just the shop assistant. His dad talked a little bit about, he took some welding and how his self-confidence came up. And really that is no different than any one of us. I mean, when you go into a new workplace, it takes you a while to kind of get used to where you are. It takes some time for you to feel comfortable. And then at some point in time, there are some people that want to go on and do something a little bit different. The success stories, and this is what I really like talking about, because there are a number of success stories. The first one was, of course, the video that won an international award in Calgary, and that's a video that you got to see. What was interesting is we didn't think this was a big deal. It was providing a need for us. There was a good business case for us in Saskatchewan for that to happen. And being a manager of fleet services and looking after the fleet equipment, it just made good sense for us to do that. And the video came as a result of that, and we really didn't think we did anything special. We really just included everyone and made sure that this was going to work well. Clint Beta, he's the guy that kind of ended the video, and he talked about that he had been working on trucks and that he had been working with mechanics, and he felt pretty good about what he was doing. And he wanted to try something a little bit differently. And actually what he did is he said he'd like to work out on one of our road crews. And here he is working on one of our road crews. And what happened was he was looking to get out of the shop and do something a little bit different. And this road crew, it's a sulfur shim crew, and if you go down Saskatchewan highways, and we still have these highways where you're going along, and with the frost, you have these depressed transverse cracks, and as you're driving down the road, you'll hear this thump, 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 thump. And what the sulfur shim crew does is it goes along and it fills those depressed transverse cracks up with sulfur, and it makes it a nice smooth ride. Now they're right across the province, and they have a hard time keeping staff working on that crew because they are away from home a lot. So Clint decided that this was something that he'd like to try and do, and so we brought in the Saskatchewan Association for Community Living to talk to the staff about what it would be like to work to work with a person with a cognitive disability. And he worked there for a couple of years, and it worked very, very well. In this picture you can see, because it was a very seasonal job, what would you do, after it got a little bit colder? And we do get a little colder in Saskatchewan than you do out here. I think it was minus 20 this morning when I phoned my wife. So and when you get into the fall and winter, what we do is we do a lot of bridge repair and guardrail repair. And so what he did is he moved over onto the bridge and guardrail repair to help work with that. And, I don't know what you guys do here, but what we do is we try as a supervisor to see if we can see if he's got the skills and abilities to move on to the next job. You're looking to make sure that those competencies are there. And if you see in this picture, he's the guy right here leaning on the shovel, and we realized he had all the competencies for that job and he could move on to something else. And he actually did. He moved on to being the parts delivery driver out of the Saskatoon shop, and he maintains a delivery route through the northwestern part of the province. Now this is a guy that was having trouble getting a job, and started working for us, and his self-confidence went up. You heard his parents talk about it, and to this day, that's what he's doing. Now, is that where he's going to end? I don't know. I don't know what his abilities are going to allow him to do, or what he can do, or what he wants to do. But what we made sure within our ministry is that the barriers to his employment were gone, so that he had the ability to do what his ability was, and that there weren't barriers coming from his supervisors or managers. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. This is another guy that supportive employment came to us and said, would you we'd like to get him back into the workforce. He had an acquired brain injury. He had fallen off of a scaffolding in Fort McMurray and was off work for 10 years and hadn't worked, and would like to get back into the workforce. He had a family, and he felt that it was time for him to move back into the workforce. They didn't think that you can't just throw somebody into the workforce and expect 8-hour-a-day work, and we knew it was going to take time. So they asked us if we would be interested in helping him get back into the workforce. So it started out with, just a couple hours a day, and then up to 8 hours a day over a period of 6 months. But before we brought him in, we brought in someone from the acquired brain injury to talk to our staff about what it would be like to work with someone with an acquired brain injury. And the staff was on side. They said, it could happen to anyone. Let's give it a try. Let's see what we can do. And over the course of 6 months, he managed to go from working a couple hours a day right up to 8 hours a day. He rewrote his interprovincial welding ticket and got it. And he has since moved on to another job. What was interesting about this job, or about this person, is that Workmen's Compensation out of Alberta was paying for his wages, and we didn't have any money in Saskatchewan at the time, so I thought it was kind of ironic that that Alberta was helping us with some of our road repairs or truck repairs for that time. But anyway, he went on to do something else. He wanted to do something else, and he's back into the workforce. And again, as a result of the employees understanding how important it is to look at a person for their ability and help people out. This one here was an interesting one. I was in Regina in the middle of winter, and it was about 25 below with the wind. I was crossing Victoria and Broad Street, and I got across the street, and this lady from the Public Service Commission came up behind me and said, Dave, we have a person who's blind that would like to work in your Yorkton shop. Actually, she started off saying, we have a person with a disability that would like to work in your Yorkton shop. Have you got a position that's open? And I said, yes, we do. For an apprentice, we do have a position that's open. I said, what's his disability? And she said, he's blind. And I said, well, can he see a little bit? And she said, no, he's been blind from birth. And I said, you're kidding me. And she said, no. And I said, have you ever been into any of our shops? And she says, no, I haven't. And I said, I've tried a lot of different things. I really believe in inclusiveness, but there's just no way that this is going to work. First of all, what is he going to be able to do? And if you've been in our shops, I mean, we're going to hurt him or he's going to hurt someone else. This just isn't going to work. I'm open to a lot of suggestions, but I don't think that this is going to work. And she says, I kind of thought the same thing, but in his pre-employment, he was at the top 20% of his class. And she said to me, he specializes in wiring. And that blew me away. I thought, how can someone who can't see specialize in wiring? And all of a sudden it hit me that the barrier to this person's employment was me. I was the one saying no to it based on what I thought a person who is blind could do, or what they could do. And so I thought about it for a while, and I said, a very short time, and I said, let's call the Southern Region Manager, and he has the workplace, or he has the diversity competency, which I'll talk about in a minute, and see what he thinks. And I phoned him and he said, let's give it a try. There's a 2-week practicum that he has to do when he's going through the pre-employment program, and let's get him out there and see how it works. So we brought him out there, we brought in CNIB to talk to the staff about what it would be like to work with someone who's blind. And the staff said, yeah, let's give it a try, let's see how it works. So the first thing they had him do was change the belts on one of our trucks. And if you know what a plow truck is, there's this great big hydraulic pump that's attached to the front of the motor. And to be able to take the belts off, you have to take this short drive shaft off, remove the belts, put the new belts on, put the drive shaft back on again. It's in a very, very hard place to remove the belts and to do this. And I'm not sure whether the mechanics were setting him up or just seeing what he could do. But the guy took the belts off, or took the drive shaft off, took the belts off, put the new belts on, and the drive shaft back on faster than any of our mechanics could do it. And the reason being is, to take that short drive shaft off, it's almost impossible to see what you're doing. And he was able to do that because that's where his specialty was. What happened in that shop was really interesting. It was one of our oldest shops, oldest meaning the oldest as far as mechanics getting close to retirement. And a lot of them, even the morale in that shop was very low. A lot of them were saying, you know, I can't wait to get out of here. I've got 3 months, 5 days, 6 hours, 26 minutes, and 5 seconds, and I'm out of here. And all of a sudden this guy come in, and he can't believe he got a job there. And he's thanking everyone for the help that he's doing, or that they're doing, and the mentorship that he was getting from the other mechanics. And he said, you know, this is a fantastic place to work. I can't believe that I've got a job here, working with such great people. And it made all these mechanics look at where they were working and thinking, you know, this can't be that bad of a place to work. And some of the fears I had, being an unsafe place, that place was not a really clean shop. They cleaned the shop up. They cleaned the shop up from one end to the other because it was important not only for them, but for the person who was blind to make sure that we had things in place. So we ended up with one of the safest shops, along with the morale going through the roof because this young guy still couldn't believe that he got a job. And the latest on him, just as I retired a year and a half ago, he got his interprovincial journey person's heavy duties ticket, and he's going for a second ticket in truck and transport, which is just amazing, and he's doing a fantastic job there. But really, what's interesting about this story is he almost didn't get it because I didn't think he could do that work. So I think we all, as managers, supervisors, really have to think about you know, what those barriers are. Even though we think we don't have those barriers are there. Charlene, this one was asked of me from the Deputy Minister. The Deputy Minister had contacted me and said, you know, our Minister would like you to hire this person. She's blind. This is another person who's blind, to work within highways. And they called me and asked if I would hire her. And I said, well, I'm not going to hire her until I do an interview with her. And I'm out of government now, so I can talk about what really did happen. But they told me, the Deputy Minister said, just go ahead and hire her. The Minister thinks it's a good idea, and I think it would be good for us. And I said, I'm not hiring her unless we do an interview and find out what her skills are, see what she's good at, and see what her passion is, and see if there is a job for her. The Deputy Minister was very reluctant about that, but he finally said, okay, as long as it works, because we want this to happen. Well, I did meet with her, and I met with her and her mother, and she was 22 years old, and she had went to our Minister, and she said, you know, nobody's willing to take a chance with me. I have skills and abilities, but nobody's willing to take that chance. And I know I can do some good work. I love public speaking. I love to be able to work with people, and I'm sure there's something I can do. And I asked her about the highway hotline, and that's where we give road information in the winter about our roads, whether she would be interested in that. And she said that would work very well for me. I think that would work really well. So when we met with the staff there where she would be working, the manager says, well, I don't know how this is going to work. I mean, she has to be able to see what's on the computer screen and be able to relay that information to the motoring public. And she said, well, we have a software program called JAWS, and I think we can make this work. So what we did is we brought in CNIB again and talked to the staff, and we worked with the staff, and we managed to have it work for her. So she started working there, and we were having trouble with Telinium, and that's the software program that we were using at for highways. And Telinium come to us and said, you know, this has been an issue for us with our software, and we would love to work with Charlene to make our software more compatible with her software, her JAWS software that she was using. And so they changed the software that not only works for her, but works for other people with visual impairments, along with not only Saskatchewan highways, but other highway provinces across the country, because it's not only us that uses Telinium. The other interesting story with her is we had a really bad storm last year, and Global News came in to do an interview with the highway hotline operators to see how bad this storm was. There was 3 or 4 hotline operators that were there. The cameras came in and the mics were there, and everybody said, no, we don't do this. We don't want to do this. And Charlene says, I'll do it. And so what they did is they interviewed her on the road conditions. She did a fantastic job. Nobody mentioned in the interview that she was blind, because she has glass eyes and it's impossible to really see. They took the camera angle at an angle that you really couldn't tell, and she did a fantastic interview. And when we mentioned this to the minister and deputy minister, it was interesting, because here we had the only person with the ability to be able to speak to the public and do an interview with a television station, and it was a person that nobody thought could do a job. And she's still with us and doing very, very well. Another success story is a person that had lost his hand. He had lost his left hand, right hand I should say, and he was not able to use our trucks in the wintertime, to plow in the wintertime. They had him doing work in the summer, but in the wintertime, if you were into one of our trucks and took a look at the dash, there's a lot of switches and buttons and different levers that you have to use to work it in the wintertime. And so he was laid off in the winter, and he was a disgruntled employee, and he says, there's got to be something that you can do to make this work. So they came to us and asked if there was something that we could do, and we talked to a mechanic, and the mechanic said, you know, what if we put electric over air over hydraulic switches? And it's really hard to see in this picture, but just above the steering wheel, you can see that there's these little switches that he was able to turn on the hydraulics. He was able to lift the truck box up, let down the plow, do all those kinds of things. But the only thing he couldn't do, or they couldn't figure out, is how you could shut down the sanding when you're meeting traffic. And when you meet traffic in Saskatchewan, some of our sand isn't quite as finely screened as what it should be. And we get a lot of complaints, and we get a lot of people with claims that we're sanding their units, and they're getting some damage done to their vehicles. And so the mechanic, who actually won an innovation award on it, he said, what if we put the old dimmer switch back on the floor? And I'm sure some of you people in this room remember that, where you'd press a button and your lights would go dim, and you'd press a button again, your lights would go bright. And that dimmer switch shut everything off as far as the hydraulics were concerned, and then turned everything right back on again. It's about a $7.50 switch, which we put in that truck, which made the claims go down for him, but in the other 300 trucks, because we installed it in all of our trucks. So when I talk to employers about the importance of inclusion, if we wouldn't have come up with something for this person who had a disability, a physical disability, we would have never come up with this idea of putting this switch back on the floor for the other 300 trucks. And that saved us thousands of dollars worth of claims every year. The Aboriginal Heavy-Duty Weldership Program, welder and heavy-duty mechanic program. When we brought in the Aboriginal people into our workplace, it was kind of funny, because we didn't have a lot of Aboriginal people working for us. And when I asked around the room why that was happening, they said, well, they just don't apply. And I was up north, and I was speaking to a number of different community colleges and telling them that when they got through their pre-employment, they should come see us. We didn't have a really good pre-employment or apprenticeship program at the time, because we were able to just hire mechanics right from the private sector at the time. And I remember when we introduced this, There was a lot of people in our shops that said, you know, I don't think this is going to work. We tried this during the old DNS days, and it just won't work. And I said, you know, I think it will. I think we just need to understand Aboriginal people better. And that's one thing I also understood over the last 15, 20 years, is that the barriers to employment, no matter what it is exactly the same. And when we use that same approach, and that means including the staff and having the staff understand the differences, whether you're Aboriginal, whether you're a woman in a non-traditional occupation, or whether you're a visible minority or a person with a visible disability or an invisible disability, they're all the same. We went through that same process with the Aboriginal employees and the staff, and we ended up with, and this is how I measure success. With the Aboriginal Apprenticeship Program, they told us after 2 years, we would have a 50% retention rate in the apprenticeship program. After 5 years, we were at an 85 to 90% retention rate. And again, it's because the workplace understood their differences, understood the differences, and understood what diversity was all about. Networking. I found that networking, when we were doing this, was so important, and we started, we made sure that we met with, you know, the Saskatchewan Institute of Technologies and all the ones that you see there, right down to the Saskatchewan Association for Rehabilitation Centers and others. One thing, and I'm going to read this letter out, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it first. When we started going around the province, we realized that diversity or inclusion in the workplace was working so well in some locations, and other locations it wasn't working very well. And we were wondering, why was this an issue? Why is it different in some locations than others? And what we realized is that the supervisor or manager, if they understood what diversity was all about, they would tell their employees, and it seemed to work. Like there didn't seem to be a backlash. It seemed to be working well. The retention rate was there. But if the supervisor or manager didn't understand what diversity was, then we had problems. We had problems with it. So our diversity committee, who I chaired at the time, along with being the fleet manager, we started talking about what could we do to make this happen so that it would work in all locations. So this was a letter that was sent out by our executive a couple of years ago, and I want to read it to you because I think it's that important. And this went to all supervisors, managers, and the other employees. And it says, the goal of the government of Saskatchewan is a public service in which women, Aboriginal people, persons with disabilities, and members of visible minority groups are employed in the same proportions in which they are available in the working age population. Our workplace should reflect the diversity found in our province. A representative workforce will ensure our policies, programs, and frontline services are responsive and relevant to the people of the province. If we in the Ministry of Highways and Infrastructure expect to implement and embrace workplace diversity, we must have leaders who understand the benefits of it. Accepting diversity starts with those in supervisory or management positions because they create the work environment. By not only understanding but embracing diversity, managers and supervisors set a positive example for their employers. A leader who can relay this message to their staff will have less resistance from employees when hiring from a diverse group. This will create a more accepting atmosphere for new employees. Because of this, it's imperative that potential supervisors and managers have the diversity competency. We cannot expect a workplace to accept and understand diversity if the manager and/or supervisor does not know what it is. If the Ministry of Highway, or I should say the Ministry of Highways Diversity Committee has recommended that the diversity competency be mandatory for in-scope and out-of-scope supervisory management positions. We are, as an executive, have approved this recommendation and are making the diversity competency mandatory. So when recruiting for positions that supervise others, being able to recruit, retain, and manage a diverse workplace will be an essential competency. And then we found some resources. When this went out to all the employees, employees, it was amazing. My phone rang off the hook and they said, Dave, what the heck is going on here? Do I have to be a woman or a person with a disability to get a supervisory position or have a disability? And I said, absolutely not. What you need to do is understand what diversity is and have that diversity competency. So they said, well, what is it? So this is what it is for in-scope and out-of-scope employees. I'm just going to read the in-scope because of time, but the out-of-scope is basically the same. Under knowledge, it's knowledge of human resource management practices, including strategies to recruit, support, and sustain a diverse workforce. Under skills, the leadership, the ability to guide and coach a diverse group of employees that results in a team that can meet its goals and objectives while maintaining a healthy, productive, respectful, and safe work environment that is free of discrimination. Under interpersonal skills, the ability to create an environment that recognizes, supports, respects, and welcomes diversity of employees and clients. The out-of-scope is basically the same. Under attributes, being respectful, welcoming, accommodating individual differences, objective, open-minded, equitable, supportive, understanding, flexible, and empathetic. When we went to the union with this and we asked them what they thought, they said, you know, if we had more supervisors and managers that had those attributes, we'd have a lot less grievances in our workplaces. And they were totally on side. They said, yes, that's what needs to happen. So if you're coming to Saskatchewan and you want to be a supervisor or manager in highways, and in fact now it's not only highways, it's all of our ministries, you have to have the diversity competency. If you knew that job inside and out but didn't understand diversity and you failed that competency during the interview, you would not get the job. So they said, well, what are you going to ask? You know, what are you going to ask in this interview? And so we gave them an example of an interview question. As a manager, how could you increase the number of employees from diverse groups and create a positive and respectful work environment for them? How would you ensure your workplace embraces diversity? It's not something that you can memorize, it's something that you have to understand. You have to be able to understand what diversity is, how important it is to understand people that are different than ourselves, and to hire people for their ability and not their disability, race, gender, or culture. We initiated a diversity award, and the diversity award, basically what that does is it recognizes employees for going above and beyond their call of duty to have diversity embraced in their workplace. And this was the first year. There was two guys that were Stu and Hugh in the front. They got jackets, as you can see, the matching jackets. And the minister and deputy minister are there, and basically recognize them for some of the work that they had done to make sure inclusion worked in their workplace. Now, a lot of people came to me and said, Dave, you are so passionate about inclusion in the workplace and that you feel it's important, and you've been doing this for a lot of years. And halfway through that video that I showed you at the very beginning of the presentation, I was asked, do you know someone? Is there someone, and this was because of cognitive or intellectual disabilities, do you know someone that has a disability? Is there someone close to you that you know has a disability or a cognitive disability? And I said, no, I don't. I don't know anybody. I come from a small town. It's a German community, Middle Lake, Saskatchewan. There's 250 people that live there, and if there was someone with a cognitive disability, I didn't know who they were. But I just knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was the right business reason as a manager to do. And it was important as a community to involve everyone in the workplace for their abilities. And that was the reason why I'd done it. And again, the video was done about 6 years after we hired people with cognitive disabilities. And then this guy was born. This is our first grandson. And I remember when my daughter called and said that she was expecting, or they were expecting. And I remember my wife taking the phone, and she was all excited, and she told me about it, and I said, you know, it's the wrong time for them. They really don't need a child right now. They just got married. They just got through post-secondary education. Both of them had gotten very good jobs, but barely into their jobs, not even past their probation. They bought a house that they couldn't afford. And I said, there's just no way that they should be having a baby right now. And Clara says, my wife says, well, I don't think you have a lot of choice here. She's pregnant, and we're not going to be able to change back the clock. And I'm not sure what it was, whether it was the thought of me being a grandfather or sleeping with a grandmother. I wasn't sure what it was, but there was something there that was bothering me. So anyway, the baby was born. We went to the hospital. Everybody's excited. The thing about grandfather sleeping with grandmother was done. And when we went to pick him up, the doctor pulled us aside and said, I don't think so. But some of the nurses are saying, based on the breastfeeding and some of the things that were happening, that he might have Down syndrome. Well, when he said that, you can imagine how my daughter, my son-in-law, and I felt. I mean, it hit us just like a rock. And my son-in-law said, well, how can you even say that? I mean, he seems so healthy, and I mean, there's no sign. And my daughter said the same thing, and the doctor said, well, that's why we didn't do the blood test. There's a very simple blood test that you can do, and if you have Down syndrome, you have 47 chromosomes, you have the extra chromosome. If you don't have Down syndrome, you have 46 chromosomes. So the doctor said, we didn't do the test, take your baby home over the next couple of weeks, watch, and if you think that there is a possibility, you can have the blood test. And so we came to the hospital, my son-in-law and I, on a high with my daughter. We left on a low, very worried about, what the future is going to bring. And I said, let's not get carried away here. First of all, the doctor doesn't even know for sure whether he has Down syndrome. Let's keep it as a secret between the three of us. Let's not even let your mother, my wife, know about this, because that's just going to add one more person that's going to be as stressed out as we are right now. So we all agreed. We drove about 10 minutes home. We opened up the door. They all broke down and told her right away. And I said, okay, we're not doing very well. So now there's 4 of us that know. And we decided as a group of 4 that that's where it was going to stay. So there was a couple of weeks of really high stress. I mean, we weren't sure what to expect. And I was down in Regina. I was emceeing at our awards banquet with Highways. And my wife phoned me and she said, Dave, you better get home. They did the test, and he does have Down syndrome. Your daughter has locked herself in the bedroom, and you need to be here. So I finished what I had to do. I had 4 hours to drive home. And I was trying to figure out what was I going to say to my kids about, where we're at with this. And it was about halfway home, about 2 hours into the drive, that I realized that Noah didn't have the problem. I did. We did. Noah was a healthy baby boy. He's going to be a little bit different than us, just like all of us are different than each other. There's going to be different challenges for him, and that we have to get over it. It's us that has to get over it. So I came home, talked to my daughter. She come out of it very quickly. It didn't take long for her at all. And my son-in-law, it took a little bit longer, but they've never looked back, and he's been absolutely incredible. Here's some pictures of him growing up. He loves soccer. I went to his first soccer game. He's older now. I can honestly say, and this isn't just coming from a grandfather, that he's the best player for both teams. It depends upon which direction he's kicking the ball. There's another picture. There's my daughter. She's a probation officer in Prince Albert. My son-in-law, he was a policeman, but he decided to give that up and build homes. He started building homes, and he quite enjoys that. I think it was a good move on their part, because as a police officer, he was putting him in jail, and as a probation officer, my daughter was letting him out. So I think it was a good thing. When I seen this picture, I started thinking, what are some of his dreams going to be when he grows up? What are some of the things that he's going to want to do? What are his abilities going to be? And what's going to happen with him when he gets older? And it was ironic that as a manager for 6 years prior to him being born, that I was doing whatever I could to break those barriers or remove those barriers in the workplace. And who would have known? I mean, everybody says, well, it's somebody else's problem. This is somebody else, that somebody else has to look after it. I would have never guessed in a million years that I would have had a child with a cognitive disability, a grandchild. And he's been the best thing that ever happened to our family. He's been doing very, very well. And I can't believe that this happened, 6 years after we hired people in our shops and seen some of the benefits. So as a result of what his grandfather has done and what you people in this room are going to do over the next number of years and what you have been doing to ensure that workplaces are free of barriers so that when people come in, that they're looked at for their ability and not for their disability. And I'm just so proud to have Noah as a grandson and to be able to talk across the country about the importance of inclusion. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak here and to do this. I got a couple more quick pictures. Since then, there's a sister. He dressed up as a fireman one year for Halloween. There he is again. His sister getting a little bit older, and then they had another one. So now he's got two sisters. This is his first day of school. He won an award that day for being the most polite student in the school, and he was so excited. So we went down to the school and we seen the award during their awards presentations, but he was really excited that he won this award. And there's a picture of them last fall, so that's the three of them, and they're definitely all included in that family. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this, and I hope that I've opened some doors, shared some light on what we did as a ministry, and thank you again for allowing me to speak here in Halifax.